New Master with bleeders. That's the good thing about buying it from like AutoZone. But like I said, this is the manual brake one, and the reason why is because there's a 1 inch master cylinder. I didn't want to put the inch and an eighth because I just was afraid that I was going to run into other problems. But I had to pull out this guy, which just pulled out easily with a pair of pliers, and I got to put the long one in now. I guess they're doing this in lieu of, putting the thing now. There was a plug in there, and I really didn't want to look for the plug, So hang on a second. So it looks like I'm putting in this long one. I guess they're doing this now with these aftermarket ones instead of putting the slug in there. Because they used to have a slug that you put in there for the shorter piston rod, and it's funny because I removed one time that had it, or I needed to reuse it or something like that, and I swapped master cylinders and I threw it in the garbage, and then thank God I went to go pick in the garbage because I realized it was stuck in there because I realized I had no pedal. But now they're putting different size ones in there. They give you the small size to start with, but I'm going to put the long one in because this one doesn't have the slug, and I thought the power brake one was always short here, which is like that on the newer ones, but they're all inch and an eighth. So I was thinking about other options, but ultimately that bracket is meant to be used with the mounting bracket with the portion valve is meant to be used with the Corvette master cylinder. Got my adapter on here. I got my two unions on, the two brass unions. That's one, and the other one is down there. And first thing I'm going to test, I'm just going to put this on with one bolt just to see how far the pedal goes before it runs out. So in case I have to take more, or in case I want to take more off the that rod to bring it back to stock level, because I just don't want it to run out of, I don't want it to hit the floor before it bottoms out on the master. That's kind of what I was trying to say in the first video, because that's a problem, because if you have a leak and you're not able to fully apply the brake that's working, you're gonna have a problem. So it's got to be able to bottom out the whole master, and still have a little bit left at the bottom, be able to fit your fingers, let's say, underneath the floorboard, So all right, gonna get to this. I got the adapter set up for this, so I can do straight line. I had one of those adapters. I'm gonna flare the rest of these though to the size they need to be, and take it from there. All right, so this is what I was talking about basically. You put your foot all the way down, and you can see I have plenty of room here. I can probably grind off that extra bit, but I gotta take everything off again to do that. Um, I will see. I wonder if it's actually better. It may not be. Might be better just make it like the original, and that way there's no issue then. Okay, so I adjusted it to the hole. It's just like stock, where it seems to be a little bit more than 3.5. Seems to be more than 3.5 that was on center, but the 4 inch was at the end of the thing from what I remember. So it's definitely better. I took more than a 1/4 inch off, so it was definitely longer, you know. So it even looks higher on the camera, but where I'm looking at it, it looks like 4 inches is right at the top of the hole. If I go in front here, it's a little misleading because it's in the foreground by, an inch or so. But it's better than it was. You shouldn't have to lift up your foot so much to get on the other side. So I'm gonna put this back in now. I countersunk this to make it slide on a little bit easier. I think that was a little bit of my problem before, so should be all right. Okay, so this is back to the stock height roughly. If anything, it's just a slight bit. It's nothing, but you can go to the floor, and it doesn't bottom. It bottoms out on the master. It doesn't bottom out by hitting the floor. So that was one of my concerns. It's all in. New switch is in. See the nuts there, and when you hit the brake light should be on now, and then they go off. And it being that the two lines that I put those unions on, they were long enough. So after bending them up, I went straight here, to the back. This guy straight in. I just had to put that adapter there, so the same 3/8 threaded line goes, and this line down here also. Where am I? See that line right there? That guy goes straight in. I just had to bend it a little bit. And then I made a new line right here. That goes to the, dropping tools. Right here. So, looking good. And of course the master is in. These things are a pain in the neck in the sense that, oh boy. Anyway, these things are a pain in the neck in the sense that everything fights each other. So you got to kind of like have this away and then bolt all this together, you know? And because I bolted this to the bracket, which made it easier. And while the master was off, I threaded the back one and the side one, and this one was obviously easier because it's right here. So it was just hard fighting these guys. They everything kind of like wants to fit really tight, and then you kind of push it on, and then once you get the bolts down, they probably bend a little bit and tweak, you know, in the right place. But it's like it's meant to be. It really is, you know. It misses the steering column. It misses everything. My only issue right now is at the park. I said that it didn't hit the booster, and I didn't have it in park all the way. So I had a lot more room before, but it does seem like it went into park. But I gotta like slide something under there to make sure, because I'm gonna be in fucking trouble if that's a problem or it doesn't want to lock into gear. But I'm sure there's an adjustment on the tranny that can be done to some degree. I don't see why not. I can't believe that I thought I had it in park when I did that. Apparently, I had put it in neutral and didn't, you know, do it. But I can't really tell, and I kind of don't want to move the wood from under the wheel. So I'll find out. Hopefully, this is not all a fucking waste. So this guy here was just moving very easily. So I'm like, let me take off this nut and redo this because that's loose and that's going to create a vacuum leak and it can wear out the threads. And I just barely touched it and it broke. Wonderful. Got the new one. Put it in. This is the new line. This line you can't even get off. You don't even need clamps. And basically you have to cut it off. Don't know if I have to re-top this off. Nope. Good. I'm going to close this up. And I'll start it up. And it's a good thing I did this because this thing was like way over here and kind of bouncing around. So because it was loose, it might have moved it. But you see, it comes really close. So it was important that I actually did that in the end because you can't really floor the gas pedal then, or maybe it was being forced. That's why this kind of looks like it's a little bit off here, you know. But it's all good. It should be working now. One other thing before I started, the linkage is not an issue. Although it's tight when you go underneath, that's because you're not really feeling where it intersects with it. It's basically the linkage comes right up to here. You put your hand back, you're feeling this, and you're like, oh my God, how tight is it? But it ends up being, if you just, like I moved the padded envelope through it, and it just comes right like here, but you know, under there. So it just goes with this circle, baseline circle. If it went back to this, then it would hit this, but it's like hanging out right here, you know, roughly. So if it's here and it's not back here, it's not an issue. And it's in park, so it's fine. You know, normally when you're in gear, it's not even an issue because you're away from it as soon as you get out of park. But obviously you wouldn't want it to prevent you from getting into park. So it's like it's meant to be. It really came out good. Gaetano, I don't know if you realize this thing is running like shit. And then when you give it gas, and I just adjusted the carburetor, the choke is like way stuck all the time. So I adjusted it. I'll know more tomorrow when I start it, but watch this. It's backfiring up through the carburetor, so it's making me feel like a rocker arm broke or the camshaft is wiped out. But I don't remember it running like this, so I think something just happened recently to this. When I did the intake, I thought I played with the carburetor, or maybe I didn't, but it ran good, and now it's not running good at all. And the firing order is correct. Although I'm getting a vibration, I can almost feel like the spark hitting the air. But you know, this tune-up is probably not that new. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. This will be a better video with the backfire. that smoke that you see in the video, it's you know, it's a constant backfire coming up through the carburetor. So something's wrong with that for sure. And it seems to be more on this side. So I was listening to the exhaust, and it's a little choppy, so it's a little hard to tell 100%. But I can tell which one is not running that right. But I don't know if it's really true dual or what. You know, like it's possible if they're two separate pipes, then one of them is not really right. But it's hard to tell, to be honest, right now. All right, so it's a day later. I test drove the car. It has some power brakes, but it's not really working, and that's because the wheel cylinders are not even applying. This car sat for a long time, and nobody took the time to really look at the brakes. They just figured that because it was a high pedal that it was okay. And it's like sometimes they kind of stop and sometimes they kind of didn't. That was probably the fault of the booster, but for the most part, you know, the booster may have not even been the issue, but I think it was part of the issue. But ultimately, the wheel cylinders, at least in the front, are definitely like seized because I was jamming on the brakes. I even got this tire to lock up a little bit, but not only, you know, so it pulled a little bit to that side, but the brakes aren't even getting warm. Like they're barely warm here after stomping on the brakes. And I know it's cold out, but the rears were warmer than the fronts. You know, that one was not as warm as the rears. This one was not as warm as that one. So I ordered new wheel cylinders and new brake hoses because you have to nip that in the butt. But that's another story. I don't know if I'm going to make a video with that, you know, so I'm probably just going to do this. But it's showing how I put this the wire in here, and I fed it through the speedometer cable hole, and I basically use one of those quick splicers on the emergency brake mechanism because I had to change the bulb in the dashboard here. So, of course, I need the keys, and I don't have them. Hang on a second. All right, I changed the bulb here for the brake light, and now it works when you put the thing on. You gotta hold it up when you hit it because the cables probably don't work that great. But technically now, when I ground this guy, I don't have it plugged on all the way, so it's one of those where you gotta kind of find something sharp to ground it on. I gotta find something. Okay, stay. All right. So I put that screwdriver in there. Let's go see. Yep. Brake light is on. And when I remove this, and now I'm just going to officially plug it in where it needs to go. And light is out. I know a lot of people don't put proportioning valves in with the drum brakes, and they just have the metering valve, and that's all you need, they say. And you know, I read somewhere else that somebody said you could use the four-wheel disc brake one. You know, I have one in this, you know, when I converted this to a dual master, but it's manual brakes. And the thing is that if you have a failure, the whole purpose of the dual master is that if you have a failure in one or the other, all the switch goes over inside and you can't anymore leak. Well, you can't, you really can't leak any more fluid out of the master, number one, so it keeps the master lubed. And it keeps the other side isolated, you know. So it'll definitely, like, because I've seen it happen before on a friend's car that had the dual master already. It was something I didn't do it. It was before me. And when that happened, he had a bad brake line, and we ended up doing all his brake lines over. So it's not really an issue. But when we did his brake lines, we had done his brakes, but we had to do the brake lines. So we did the brakes, and the car stopped fine. But a brake line went, and when the brake line went, he had no brakes because it kept going, you know. And there was really not enough. Like or we did the brakes after. I think we did the brakes and the brake lines together. Like we knew it needed to be done. I think we had done the master, and uh, we converted to a dual master, but we didn't, put a proportioning valve, and we didn't do all that stuff. And then we like, we know we needed to do brakes, so I think we ordered them, and just to sure shooting, like the brake line went, and it was brake line went. There was no, like, just the amount of adjustment that the brakes were out caused it to not break, you know, and you collectively together though there was enough fluid being pushed. So it's a funny thing when you don't have a proportioning valve. So um, I'm not sure. Like the metering valve is really only for disc brakes. That's why the drum brakes don't have any of that stuff. So this doesn't have any of it, and the four-wheel disc is pretty much just a through valve. It doesn't have any residual anything supposedly. Um, as far as I know, it's basically removed. Like I heard you can even convert the PV2 into a PV4 by removing something out of it. But I just bought the PV4. That way it's safe. Like the light will come on now, and the light will warn somebody. I mean, granted, you'll feel it in the brake pedal, but with the dual master, you see the one side that's low on fluid. You have a problem. Blah blah blah. And it's well worth it, in my opinion. I don't think it could really affect the brakes too much. Of course, like I said, this car has a problem because I I kind of didn't diagnose it. I just agreed with it because the car is old, and I'm like, oh yeah, well, if you power boost, getting hard and not getting hard. The thing is, this guy didn't really admit that his brakes were never really that good, even when it was working. He said it was working, the booster, at one point, and then it wasn't. And I don't, now he just admitted to me that he always felt like he was in a death trap every time he used his car. It felt funny. So I really feel the whole, like, largely the problem was the wheel cylinders, because the front ones are old. Like the rear ones look like they've been done. The rear brake hose looks like it's been done. I mean, even the front brake hose looks like it's been done, but it's like 60 years old. Got to figure somebody had done something. But those wheel cylinders, you got to take off the whole backing plate and pick up the drum. It's a big pain in the ass, and nobody wants to do it, so they just bleed it. But you can bleed it all day long. But when you have rust in the piston bores, they just don't move. I don't care how much pressure you put behind it. And like I said, I got this one. This one is moving a little bit because I got it to pull to one side, but it still didn't brake as good as I expected it to. So I'm really hoping for better brakes. The other problem is this car was running good. I had done the water pump 6 months ago on this, and he had since done the alternator somewhere else. And I don't know, the plugs don't look like they're old, but the car's not running right. I got zero compression out of one of the plugs back there. So when I run it and take off the oil cap, there's no blow by. So the valves melted in the head. It's you just let it fuel only type of stuff. This is what happens. But it was running so good earlier in the year. So I don't know what happened in between then, but it is what it is. But this really came out good. It looks factory. It's going to work fine. There's a problem with the brakes themselves. So I think that's it. I'm not going to really go through it, unless I have something pertinent to say. I'll put a part 3. But you know, it's what I did worked. It's just and the procedure will help somebody maybe. When they want to fit it in these obscure cars that they really don't have a specific booster for, and the booster that they have available doesn't really quite work, because even the 9-inch booster, which I've seen in a big Cadillac like this, so I can only imagine that the brake pedal is a lot higher, because I was saying, like, I cut the threads down a lot. This one, you had to cut the threads. It was just so fucking long. But if I got the 9-inch booster, I think there's a lot of people that would be tempted to just leave it alone, and then the brakes would be, like, really high. I think that's kind of silly. You got to do something. So, maybe if you're short, it's good, but that's what the chair is supposed to move for. Who knows with these old cars. So that's it. I think that's a good thing. I did show anybody, like, what you can do as far as these big cars that where the power booster is not available, and you're skeptical of how well somebody can rebuild it, which is definitely a case. I've seen it happen with the 62 Chrysler. I ended up putting a 9-inch booster in that. And, you know, these cars are, you know, the booster is cheap. It was like $119 for the booster. So why spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars when you could just do a little work and you make it fit? You know, like I said, it probably would have been a little bit better for the 9-inch booster, but this is a big booster. It should be fine, you know. Should be, you know, I was trying to compensate for the fact that it's just two separate, you know, it's a double line there. That's why I ended up getting the 1-inch master cylinder, because it gives it more leverage, you know, and more throw. But like I have no throw on the brakes. It's funny how hard and high it is, and it don't go anywhere. That's because, like the pedal's like weird. Like it's so hard. I'm like, this is not a bad booster. This is, you know, because I was thinking, was it defective booster? But it's really just, you know, really no maintenance. You know, you put a paint job on before they made sure that it stopped. But all right, thanks for watching. I think that's going to be it for this. But like I said, I'll make a part 3 if anything.